Okay, most of you don't want to hear the details, so speedrun Connie, go.
We were working on a Little Nightmares theory. Hit a roadblock. So we wrote a cohesive timeline of every relevant game in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise because people who watched the movies kept asking us a good way to get a rundown and we don't have one. We recorded all of it, then I got so sick I couldn't leave my bed. Recovered, found out our audio was corrupted. Then Sega released an actual timeline, but only in Japan, so we've got to rewrite portions before we can even fix the audio.
So, in the meantime, DCI. FNaF 2 is a very confusing game that seemingly has no major connection to the rest of the franchise. It happens before the first game, features characters that either disappear entirely or get remodeled, and the only toy animatronic that features prominently in later games is the puppet, who might not even have been made for this location. And yet, it has one of the longest unsolved mysteries of the entire franchise. Does the DCI happen, or are we all crazy?
Well, not only do we think the dead children incident was a thing that occurred, but we think we know how it happened and who it happened to. And also the Mimic might be here, but that's more of a side thing. Hi, I'm Connie.
And I'm Cori.
And let's waste no more time and jump right into the pit.
If your phone is ringing, you better don't answer it. Now, we return to platform.
FNaF 2 was released only 3 months after the initial game, and it served as not only a secret prequel, but as a way to further establish the hidden lore that had so fascinated the internet. In the original game, only a few things had been established. That a serial killer dressed as one of the mascot characters lured 5 children into a secret location, murdered them, and stuffed their corpses into the animatronics, and those children probably started haunting the animatronics, and now they're trying to kill you.
With this new game taking place several years before the original, though that's not revealed to us until we get our paycheck, this meant that a lot of backstory could not only be revealed, but be shown around the time it happened. With Phone Guy's calls, the randomized post-death minigames, and the first game's context of there being a certain bite of 87, we can piece together a very basic story. Unfortunately, the order of events is still up in the air and heavily debated on, including whether a certain important event even happened. So right now, let's just get out basic facts so we're all on the same page.
After the missing children's incident at the original location, Fazbear closes their doors, only to reopen at a different spot with new, tech-heavy animatronics that have extreme security measures in place to prevent another serial killing incident. Specifically, they have access to a criminal database and facial scanners in order to block any suspicious persons from entering the restaurant.
Originally, the company wanted to reuse the old animatronics, but they smelled so bad and looked so shitty that they decided to use them for parts. However, this means we've got twice the amount of animatronics from the first game, plus 2 more. The first one is the puppet, which we find out in a later game was meant to act as security, but after it failed to protect Charlotte and Emily from going outside and getting hit by a car, got these neat possession marks and was demoted to prize counter runner, who was also possessed by Charlie. The second new animatronic was Balloon Boy. He's Balloon Boy. Also, JJ, she just doesn't matter right now.
In the new location's first week of operation, the sick new night guard we're going to refer to as... not William Afton. That's super long though, so let's just shorten it to William Afton. So William Afton worked for a full week, but kept complaining to upper management that the animatronics were trying to get into his office and stuff him into a suit. They got tired of hearing his stupid voice on the phone, so they switched him to the day shift.
During this week, or at least before this call, something bad happens. We're not sure what, but it's something that could be traced to Fazbears, but doesn't necessarily implicate them.
I can personally assure you that whatever is going on out there, however tragic it may be, has nothing to do with our establishment. It's just all rumor and speculation.
Is he
People trying to
lying?
make a buck, you know.
So it's suspicious enough to get an investigation later in week 2, but it's nothing that's super obviously a Freddy's problem, just probably a Freddy's problem.
However, during the second week, while William Afton is the day guard and Jeremy Fitzgerald takes over the night shift, something else happens. The animatronics seem to start getting more and more aggressive with a specific dislike for adults. What's been found to keep them at bay is putting on a Freddy mask to pretend you're one of them, flashing them repeatedly with a flashlight until their brains reset, or just winding Charlie's Cocomelon box until she calms down.
The day after Ralph the Phone Guy tells Jeremy not to worry about what's happening out there, an investigation officially happens around Freddy's, and they might have to close for a few days. Then, the very next morning, the building is put on complete lockdown with nobody allowed in or out. Our day guard Willy Boy is 99% likely to be the culprit of whatever just happened, as he suddenly disappeared and previous employees are no longer allowed in the building.
Then, the next day, someone uses a spare yellow suit in the back. Whether it's Spring Bonnie or Fredbear is unclear, but as soon as someone used it, the animatronics went completely apeshit, and now the place is set to be closed for a long while. With the exception of a birthday party happening the next day. But hopefully nothing will go wrong there.
We know from the Night 7 paycheck that a new guard has to be hired after the incident, and the week before practically spells out for us that the bite was done to an employee, so rip Jeremy. The week before could very heavily imply that Withered Foxy is the one who did the bite, but as always, Connie and I do think it's a little suspicious that Toy Chica has these lines.
Where's my beak? Lodged in your forehead, of course.
And the next upcoming lineup of animatronics specifically did not include Chica, and when Glamrock Chica is made so many years later, she is one of the few animatronics who doesn't make bite motions at Gregory, almost like she was specifically programmed not to bite people. Yet when she's near a robot, her first instinct is to go chomp chomp to the forehead.
But believe it or not, the bite of 87 is not actually what we'll be discussing today. But before we get to the full theory, there are a few more things that happened in FNaF 2, mainly the post-death minigames. Take Cake to the Children has basically already been solved. We know this is the death of Charlie Emily after she was locked out of a Freddy's location while some kind of party was going on. William Afton then drove up, stopped the car, got out, killed her, and left. While we made the car crash joke earlier, this probably means he killed her in some means other than a direct hit or knife wound.
Foxy Go 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 then shows the original Foxy in what looks like the original location, considering the curtains, going out to meet kids, and then seeing the dead bodies of the MCI as Afton stands on the side.
Give Gifts, Give Life is... We're not gonna get into all of it, but we know that it demonstrates Charlie somehow giving the main four MCI the ability to possess their animatronics. We never see her give Golden Freddy a mask, implying that something is different about this child. Then, finally, save them. Oh boy, save them.
You start the minigame as Withered Freddy in the storage room of the FNaF 2 location. When he leaves the room, the puppet tries to lead him to its box, but he can wander around pretty much anywhere in the building. You could see 5 bodies strewn about the location, along with 6 blood puddles in different spots. While this has spouted arguments about whether there might be a secret 6th victim, what I will say right now is that these 2 puddles being close together implies to me that it was just supposed to represent a trail of blood that leads to this body in Mangle's Cove. So, 5 victims. Anyway, the other thing you can find in this game is William Afton, who can run towards you and either deactivates you or beats up an 8-foot-tall, heavy animatronic all on his own, ending the minigame. The minigame can also end if you touch or reach the puppet's box, where there is also a body. In the back, you hear the Freddy talker spelling out "save them," but if William gets to you, you get text reading, you can't.
Now the question is this the incident that shut down the FNaF 2 location? Seems to be, especially since we know William was the one pulling shit here. Did it happen during his night guard shift? If so, how did it get found out during the investigation on week 2? Where did the bodies go otherwise? Into the toys? I don't think you can fit anything in Mangle. Also, as we brought up in our big Solving FNaF video, there's probably not room to stick anything in the other 3 either, what with their skinny bodies and advanced electronics. But if it happened on week 2, when? Right at 6 a.m? In between the day shift and the night shift?
We don't see bodies during any of our shifts.
The main theory for Save Them, that there are these 5 new murders committed by Afton during the FNaF 2 location's run, is referred to in the fanbase as the DCI, the Dead Child Incident, since the bodies were seemingly propped up in different locations and thus were likely found, causing the shutdown.
There is the alternate theory that these are just the bodies of the MCI being removed from their animatronics. This theory mainly comes from the fact that a second incident of 5 dead kids literally never comes up again. Ever. The MCI remain relevant all through the entire first arc, but any reference to a second incident is completely wiped. The problem with this theory, though, is that if William was removing the bodies, it would be to hide them, right? Not prop them up in random locations? Especially since if the bodies are what was spotted, the missing children wouldn't be missing anymore. While you could explain that away as Fazbear covering up the bodies before the cops could get there, and the cops just finding DNA strains or something, you can also use that argument for the DCI not being mentioned by a lot of people post-game. Fazbear cover-up. Also, bodies that have been dead for over a year and a half would not produce puddles of blood.
Wouldn't it be easier to just make them one file, maybe not have blood at all?
There was also someone to save if the puppet is telling Withered Freddy to save them, right?
But if the DCI happened, did they possess the toys? Well, if they did, it didn't go anywhere because they were immediately destroyed and discarded. But how could they not possess these things if they got killed in this location? Well, they didn't get stuffed in, so their souls might not have hooked on to the animatronic metal or whatever, leaving the toys to act out just because they have parts from the Wizards. Great, Afton, you killed 5 kids and didn't even get talking robots out of it. Lame.
There's plenty of good theories as to this. Whether William wanted to stuff a new set of kids and forgot till the last minute that they wouldn't fit, or if it was a last-minute Hail Mary to get the animatronics to react like Rytoast theorized. But of course, like always, we have a bit of a different, unique interpretation. Not just of the DCI, but of why the toys act the way they do in the meantime.
And to start off these theories, we must first ask, what the hell is a Shadow Bonnie?
Right.
Yeah.
Are you by chance trying to work on the Showtime, Jen?
I want Showtime, damn it! It's all I want! It's worth it! It's pretty fast. That's pretty Fazbear up there!
As we've noted, the DCI are literally never brought up again in this series. Unless you believe in Lefty DCI. Which we do, but not relevant here. The thing is, assuming it happened, this then means we have absolutely no information as to the identity of the victims. And while you can use the
extended universe
to solve questions about the NCI, such as confirming their names and murderer-assigned personas, it seems that the DCI didn't even happen in either the Silverize or Fazbear Frights.
Fazbear Frights has absolutely no reference to any of the main 4 toy animatronics. Of the others, we see the puppet in the original location in a deleted story and its mask in the epilogues, and the only time Balloon Boy is seen, he has a different name, slightly different appearance, and changed role as a toy. We also see Shadow Bonnie, but they have no connection to any of the other toys, and they're introduced in a completely different role and with their own game at Freddy's rather than just being a phantom in the background.
Meanwhile, in the novel trilogy, the Twisted One has Charlie kidnapped and taken to a closed Freddy's location full of arcade games and Balloon Boys. While it has a different appearance to the game's location, the presence of Balloon Boy in his first appearance near the carousel evokes his placement in the game, and the posters of the characters imply the toy animatronics.
Specifically, Freddy is said to have rosy cheeks, something he lacks in his original form, and Bonnie's picture is described to be eerily similar to the Let's Rock poster from in-game.
This following sentence has Charlie literally using the word toys even. The reason we bring up that this was definitely the FNaF 2 location she was brought to is that they specifically go out of their way to establish that FNaF 2 did not happen in this universe, because this location never opened.
Something about the arcade games nagged at her. She looked them up and down carefully, but nothing tripped her memory. None were turned on, and none of them were games she had ever seen before. She wiped the dust from the screen of the central console, revealing a glossy black screen. Wait. At Freddy's Pizza, ghostly images had been burned into the arcade screens after years of play. She pressed a couple of buttons experimentally. They were stiff and shiny, untouched. That's why it feels so empty, she said to the chimp above her. No one's ever been here, have they?
So while Fazbear Frights might be circumstantial evidence, it seems pretty clear that FNaF 2 did not happen in the Silverize at least. All that to say, we should have no clues about the likelihood or the identity of the DCI.
Or do we? While we did establish it doesn't seem like FNaF 2 happened in the Fazbear Frights timeline, we still should probably look at Shadow Bonnie's appearance in the series. The puppet basically only has glorified cameos, and Balloon Boy is relegated to his own knockoff, but Shadow Bonnie gets to star in their own short. While again seemingly unconnected to the DCI, sometimes pulling things from the books helps us understand the games a bit more. Case in point, we know Charlie is the puppet, so. This short is a very simple parable about a kid cheating in a game, then getting a demon thrown onto his back that slowly drains his life force until he loses all hope. Fun stuff. What's it called again?
Hide and Seek. That's also the game Shadow Bonnie is meant to be playing. Let's pull up the diagram of where the DCI bodies were found and save them. If we look at these specific areas, you may notice a pattern. We noted the bodies in blood pools separately earlier because they do indeed seem to be separate. The only bodies close to the puddles of blood are the ones beside the puppet box and the one by Toy Bonnie, but even then the blood by Puppet Kid is beneath the box, while Puppet Kid is outside of it. The other 3 bodies are placed specifically away from the puddles. Now in such a limiting visual medium as 8-bit, every detail is important. Rather than place each body atop each bottle of blood, Mr. Cawthon over here specifically chose to put the blood and bodies separately. As we mentioned that long dead bodies don't tend to bleed, I would hazard a guess that they were alive when they entered the building, but these blood spot marks where the children were murdered. Their bodies were simply moved afterwards.
If we go with our earlier assumption that these two blood puddles are meant to indicate a body being dragged, that puts us at 5 points of death. The puppet box underneath the stage, outside the doorway to Party Room 1, and something in this general area? Looking at the cameras, we can see this area most likely denotes Cam 10, as it's just outside of Mangle's Cove.
This would put it right in the game area, where Balloon Boy is stationed. You might remember we just mentioned he stands outside the carousel, which is about where this blood puddle would position a kill. So the kill may have been at the carousel.
And finally, the fifth puddle, if we again assume these two are meant to represent someone being dragged, is right underneath the table in Party Room 4. Most of these seem like hiding places. Inside a box, behind a ride, under a table.
So who says the DCI were not killed in an extremely fucked up game of hide and seek? Whether they were hiding from the security guard after breaking in, if he kidnapped and dragged them in and they escaped, or if he set up this game himself.
William's a messed up guy. I could definitely see him telling these children he's locked in the building that if they can hide until morning, they get to live, without ever intending to keep that promise.
Anyway, but are we just pulling this idea completely out of nowhere? This sounds something more like fanfiction than speculation at this point. It's not like hide and seek has been relevant in other parts of the franchise. And it's definitely not like we've heard of a new and high-tech line of animatronics witnessing specifically a fucked up game of hide and seek where people die and carrying that into future actions. I'm still trying to find that bit in FNaF AR where Bonnie ate a cat.
It's gotta be an American Psycho reference, right? Does no one ever mention that?
I don't think many FNaF fans have seen American Psycho.
Oh, check this out. Mangle could crawl on the ceiling.
Good for him.
This email also says that Mangle could take herself apart and put himself back together, change her own shape at will, not just the whims of everyone else.
Huh. The Mimic can do that.
Alright, I'm gonna try keyboard searching Bonnie. Does anyone know how to do that on a phone?
Do you guys want to get food on the way home?
Fast food makes me sick.
We can just get milkshakes, it's fine.
Did you know there's a spider in Taiwan that produces milk for its young?
Neat.
Wait, the Mimic!
The Mimic produces milk for its young?
No! While we don't believe in Wolf Frights games, we do think there's at least some parts of Tales from the Pizzaplex that are or are close to canon in the game's timeline. And with the appearance of the Mimic, it's probable that its story and the epilogues are, at the very least, important. So when we realized it does the same thing that Mangle does, and that there's also a bit where it hacks into radio frequencies, something we've seen Mangle do, we started paying attention.
Lucia flipped the page and read some more. It's an old user's manual, she said. It describes a bunch of different kinds of robotic endoskeletons. The one we saw is either a Mimic Model 1 or 2. She ran her finger down the page. These things are pretty creepy. They have retractable and expandable limbs and a contracting torso so they can fit into pretty much any mascot costume.
What the hell is a Mimic Model 2? We've only seen the one, right? Well...
I wish I could read all of this, but it seems like the original Mimic began mimicking not just other animatronics but also people. I can just make out the words misconstrue, scared, potential disaster, and deactivate remaining Mimic endos.
So at some point, Fazbear used the Mimic's programming for a whole line of endos. Probably the Mimic 2 program, right? But when they did something they weren't supposed to do, Fazbear scrapped the entire lineup and destroyed them. We only know of one other line of animatronics that have had that happen to them. And not just that, Mimics can pull themselves apart and put themselves back together, in the exact same way Mangle is described to. Could the toys be possessed by wandering souls, or the MCI agony, or are these literally Mimics? Not to mention that...
They even started retrofitting them with some of the newer technology. The thing was just so ugly, you know?
Oh, that's mean.
Which could put the Mimic everywhere in this location.
We looked this up afterwards, and as far as we're aware, the only other person who caught on to this was Sire Squawks in his video What the Mimic Saw. And Sire Squawks noticed some other stuff that's insanely similar between the two instances, such as the Endo O2s having coils like the book's Mimics are described as, and the possibility that the animatronics staring is due to their programming.
It also explains why they study and stare in the first place. The whole point of the Mimics under the mass-produced program was this whole idea that they could just watch people and adults perform, and they could copy it without having to be programmed. which explains why they keep staring at people, especially adults.
Really good video on this whole theory, check it out.
Okay, but what does that have to do with the DCI?
Kelly rubbed her arms. Okay, she said, but what does that have to do with the mimic's attempt to trick us? Lucia closed the notebook. I think the mimic might seem like a malevolent creature to us, but it's really just a robot that was designed to copy what it observes. At some point, it must have seen maybe something like a hide-and-seek game, or whatever. It probably can't reason that the trick would only work once.
This line is interesting, because the mimic hides with David, but doesn't specifically play hide-and-seek within the story. Mainly because Edwin is too busy to play as the Seeker.
We're speculating here that Fazbear used the mimic endoskeletons for their brand new, state-of-the-art, totally safe Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
However, the toys stood there and watched as William went around murdering kids in a fucked-up game of hide-and-seek. They stored that away for later, then started acting really weird around everything else, to the point where the employees started to get worried for guest safety.
Wear your uniform, stay close to the animatronics, and make sure they don't hurt anyone, okay?
Alright.
For now,
But this video isn't just about Mimic toys. Even with the eerie parallels between the Mimic and the puppet, who was part of the toy line here, no, what's important is its association with specifically a fucked-up game of hide-and-seek, the DCI's death spots being hiding spots, and Shadow Bonnie. Shadow Bonnie, again, doesn't have much connection to the DCI in Fazbear Frights, but it's very interesting that the main FNaF 2 character to make an appearance in this series in a book titled Hide and Seek, living in a game titled Hide and Seek, and whose sole goal in this entire short is to win Hide and Seek.
With that realization, it was like something clicked inside of him. A veil had lifted, and he saw everything with sudden clarity. Just like Toby, the Shadow had only wanted to win.
So in the Frights universe, the main personality trait of Shadow Bonnie is competitive, specifically in regards to hide and seek. When Toby refuses to concede the game, he dies. Kind of like how children who couldn't hide from a scary security guard wielding a knife don't get to win either. People wonder often what the Shadow animatronics are, to the point where we didn't even know when we made our big FNaF timeline. And one of the major questions is why they look like Toy Bonnie instead of regular Spring Bonnie, while Shadow Freddy looks like Golden Freddy. Two completely different animatronic lines. Two completely different sets of murders.
Shadow Bonnie in FNaF AR serves as a protector of Remnant and appears to be made entirely out of what the game calls Dark Remnant, or Agony. If Shadow Bonnie is made entirely out of Agony, who's to say his counterpart, Shadow Freddy, isn't as well? Two beings shaped like very distinct animatronics made entirely out of Agony. Golden Freddy is the hidden low-key ringleader of the missing children, makes sense for a form of the MCI to take. But what about the DCI? Well, we mentioned that on the map, one of the kids died right underneath Toy Bonnie. If they didn't possess anything, it would make sense for them to take the form of what they got closest to.
Maybe? I feel like there's something we're missing.
Well, you're the one who's read all the books. Anything else in there about hide and seek?
You mean other than the shirt with the same name? Oh, here, in the Silver Eyes, Carlton specifically mentions he used to hide under the tables to try and stay overnight at Freddy's.
You mean exactly like the blood puddle under the table in Party Room 4?
Yeah, that's funny. Shit, dropped my book. Give me a sec.
You okay over there?
Yeah, I just... Hold on, let me see what page I landed on.
Clayburg closed his eyes, and he was there again, the cheerful family restaurant, its floor streaked with blood. After Michael disappeared, he had worked 14-hour days, sometimes sleeping in the station. Every time he came home, he went to look at Carlton, who was usually asleep. He wanted to grab his son and hold him close, never let him go. It could have been any of the children there that day. It was his blind, dumb luck that the killer had spared his own.
Hey Cori, I have a hypothesis.
Cori? I just found something else about hide and seek in this book.
Connie?
I just found something else.
Connie, whose friend was Carlton?
Okay, gang, let's get back to this map of the DCI. As we just mentioned, there's a blood puddle right under a table, the place where Carlton always hid. But let's look at the other areas, like, for instance, This carousel.
The carousel at the first location, which doesn't appear in either FNaF 1 or Into the Pit, is described multiple times in the Silver Eyes book, and multiple times is associated directly with Charlie's friend Marla. We have a brief moment of characters reminiscing about her throwing up on the ride. It's the first thing her brother Jason runs into when she arrives, and just as William escapes them for the first time to grab the spring Bonnie suit, she slows them down because she tripped on the merry-go-round. You know what else is brought up in this book and associated with a specific one of Charlie's friends?
I used to go and talk to the bunny. What was his name? Bonnie, Charlie said. Yeah, said Jessica. I used to complain to him about my parents. I always thought he had an understanding look about him. Charlie smiled a little. I remember that, she said. Jessica in her prim little dresses, her brown hair in two tight braids like a little kid out of an old book, walking up to the stage when the show was over, whispering earnestly to the life-size animatronic rabbit.
Up to the stage and right under Bonnie. That's 3 very specific places that correlate to 3 of Charlie's friends in the Silver Eyes. Hold on, how many friends does she have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Fuck!
The puppet first appears in FNaF 2. The puppet is Charlie. Are the other toy animatronics that Charlie is associated with her actual real-life friends?
Now, another thing I forgot to mention about the FNaF 2 building in the novel trilogy is that it, very specifically, is walking distance from the original location. There's a series of tunnels under them that run all the way to Henry's house, because William is an obsessive little rabbit. And Henry's house was just outside of Hurricane, Utah, where the first game reportedly takes place. The gang were able to get there just by following William through the ruined tunnel system.
It's also somewhere between Hurricane and St. George, as where Jessica and Charlie go to college and where Jessica and John started their search for her after being led by Shadow Freddy to the location. Hey, Connie?
Yeah?
Why was Shadow Freddy in this book?
That's a great question! I have no answers for you. No, seriously, I don't.
FNaF 2 being close to the original restaurant also makes sense from an in-game perspective. Ralph mentions the original location as if it's something Jeremy should know about, and William was able to work there daily for 2 weeks, implying he lived somewhat nearby. And if you believe that Michael is Fritz Smith, at this point even the Ultimate Guide believes it, he also would have had to get in there in record time to take that shift.
All this means that the children who lived in Hurricane could very easily make their way over to the FNaF 2 location. Or, alternatively, it wouldn't be hard to kidnap them from Hurricane and bring them there. Now, going back to Charlie's friends, let's go over what we know about them in the books.
We know she hung out with John, Jessica, Carlton Burke, Marla, Lamar, and Michael Brooks.
They were all close friends and avid Freddy's fans until Michael Brooks was kidnapped, killed by William Afton, and then stuffed into Fredbear, which kinda killed the mood of the place a little bit. This happened in 1985, and slowly the kids started moving away, starting with Charlie. But why exactly do her friends move?
Is it strange though? Jessica said thoughtfully. My parents. You remember, my mum's from New York originally. She used to joke about going back. When I go back to New York. But it might as well have been when I win the lottery. She didn't mean it. And then right after Michael's. Right after, she stopped joking about it. And then 3 months later we were all on the plane to visit her sister in Queens, and we never came back. My parents left because of Michael, Marla said. They all turned to her. Afterward, my mum couldn't sleep. She said spirits were stirring in the town. Unquiet. My dad told her she was being ridiculous, but we still left as fast as we could.
Both girls specifically state that their parents left because of Michael. Note that they say Michael and not the entire missing child incident. While Marla's mom references unquiet spirits plural, we know Michael was the one of the children to go missing in the books, with 4 others disappearing before him. That didn't seem to scare Jessica and Marla's parents, not until it was a child they knew, not until their child's friend was the one who went missing. It was possibly because the details of the initial cases were not revealed to the public until as late as possible, but they still would have seen missing posters, right?
Things are different, though, when it's someone you know. When you pass a bulletin board of missing people you don't recognize, the faces blur together. You just think sadly that you hope they get found one day. The faces on the back of milk cartons become part of the design. But when a sudden presence from your life is gone, something that you thought you could take for granted, only to find it has been ripped so violently from you, it does something to your emotions. It can make you unquiet.
But what if it was never anyone you knew? What if, we're in the games universe, and Michael Brooks was never one of the missing children? Instead, there's someone named Cassidy inside that golden bear, and Michael Brooks either does not exist, does but gets to keep living, or William fucked around and these Mikes are the same somehow. If 5 children went missing in the town you were in, but the killer was caught and convicted, you might feel uneasy and unsafe. But the instant terror you'd feel if you knew one of the children might not hit you the same way.
Of course, we can't say for certain that Jessica and Marla wouldn't have moved in the universe where Michael lives, but it's a distinct probability. Meanwhile, as for the boys, Carlton and Michael's families never moved. John and Lamar, though...
We moved because my dad got a new job. The summer after 3rd grade. John said. That's not exactly mysterious. Lamar, you left in the middle of the semester that year. Yeah, he said. But that's because when my parents split, I went with my mum to Indianapolis. He frowned. But my dad moved too. He's in Chicago now.
Summer after 3rd grade, huh? Okay. We know the children were 7 years old when the MCI happened, they say it repeatedly. The MCI happens in June, and Charlie's birthday is May 13th, so to be 7 by June 1985, she'd have to be born in 1978. Obviously, her birthday was retconned in the 4th closet, but we should also keep in mind that this is Robot Charlie, who might have aged differently from the original Charlie, but the important thing is that all of her friends would be in this same age bracket, since they're all in the same class. Going by the age cutoff in Utah, that would put the MCI as between their 1st and 2nd grade. 3rd grade would start autumn 1986, which means the summer after 3rd grade would be...
Okay, but the bite happens around autumn of 87, except it's never explicitly said where John moves. But, in the Twisted Ones, his cousin gets him a construction job in St. George, which implies that his family lives local to the area, which is, again, only about a half-hour's drive from Hurricane, and again, has a midpoint somewhere where the FNaF 2 location would be, so he's not far.
Lamar moves to Chicago because of his parents' divorce the semester beforehand, which could put him out of the picture as a DCI kid, which would leave the main 4, and Michael makes 5. Lamar once again saves himself by avoiding this white people bullshit as much as possible. Or we could say that Lamar is here, and Michael isn't, because Lamar is slightly more important, but whatever, we'll just say it's Michael for now. Lamar gets to live!
But he's not coming, Carlton persisted. Marla smiled slightly. He said, I'm never, ever, ever setting foot in that town again, not ever, never for as long as I live. And you shouldn't either. But he said we're all welcome to visit him.
So not only do these kids live nearby, have a history at Freddy's, and are highly associated with 3 spots we see puddles of blood, all of Charlie's friends seem to parallel the animatronics as well. Jessica and Bonnie was already discussed. Marla is a plus-sized, extremely enthusiastic, outgoing girl, which makes her a shoo-in for the chica of the group, which I guess makes Jason the cupcake. I mean, a little brother is basically a dog. John mentions that Freddy was always his favorite. He's constantly around Charlie, who, while not the puppet in this universe, is heavily associated with a specific rabbit. And he is the first of the teens to hear Freddy's music box, to the point where even Charlie doesn't hear it, and she has, robot ears.
The other boys are a bit trickier. Carlton is heavily associated with Golden Freddy, considering his best friend Michael is the one who's in it. However, we don't have a toy Fredbear, so these two have gotta go somewhere else. With Carlton, we can easily take his red hair, theater kid personality, and the fact William kidnaps him in front of Pirates Cove, and assign him to Foxy. Which gives us our main 4 for toy animatronic possession. Or non-possession, considering William seems to have never actually gotten them into the suits.
We mentioned before that it's possible the toys act up just because of the withered data, so if they don't possess the animatronics William meant for them to possess, it also means we don't have to assign the 5th kid to anything that specifically has unknown ghost patterns. We can look at the whole lineup. Considering Balloon Boy is hand-sized, and I don't even think William would be stupid enough to believe he could stuff a kid in that, could that open up the 5th kid as meant for the puppet? William might not have known that Charlie was in there until he actually dragged a body to the box and found her going to tattle on his boss, Freddy Fazbear. So would that be Michael drawing everyone together Brooks, or Lamar, who literally puppeteers the animatronics around in the first book? Either way, with that, we have a full set of lambs for the slaughter.
I never liked playing the games, Jessica said, smiling. They moved too fast, and just when I'd start to figure out what to do, I'd die and it would be someone else's turn.
And more than that, specifically, What is a game that is very special to Charlie and John?
John came up next to her, and she felt a flash of irritation. She did not want to be cajoled into joining the search. He stood there for a moment, looking at Freddy, then leaned in close to her and whispered, "I'm counting to 100. You'd better hide."
They play a version of hide and seek where there is a safe zone, where you don't die immediately once you're found, but you have a chance to run for safety. And where's another one of those blood puddles? Right outside the security office. One that, even if a child didn't know what it was, though a particularly observant and well-read one might, they could at least have spotted a phone. A safe zone.
Now these parallels are all very interesting, but here's the real kicker. Charlie and her friends in the Silver Eyes. How do they first encounter William Afton?
They try to break into a Freddy's location, and William meets them, disguised as a security guard, convinces them to trust him, and then immediately turns around and tries to kill them. This group of kids runs into William Afton, the security guard, when the last time we saw him as a security guard was in FNaF 2, and then the kids follow him into a Freddy's. Could this exact instance have happened in the game's universe, where this same friend group tries to get into a Freddy's after hours, only to trust the wrong person? This time with deadlier consequences. But why would the Silver Eyes gang want to break into an open Freddy's location when they were, 9 years old? Because they're Charlie's friends. As adults, they broke into the location where Michael Brooks was killed. As children, they break into the building where Charlie Emily was killed.
Hey, real quick, do you guys remember the Midnight Motorist car to 5 Laps at Freddy's and how it pretty much made it super likely that William Afton is the driver? Should we pay attention to the fact that the dice inside are an 8 and a 7? Something that should not be appearing on a 6-sided die. Is it just a funny reference? Or does it mean that Midnight Motorist happened in 87? But I thought we all agreed this was the aftermath of Charlie's death, and she dies in 83 or 85. Right?
The graves in Help Wanted 2 position her as dying after the MCI.
Yes, I know people like to argue this point, but we personally just find the puppets sitting on the graves needing to be lit in the right order. Really obvious symbolism for a death order.
We know that Charlie has to be dead to possess the puppet by November 1987, so that gives her from June 85 to November 87 to die.
We know that in our major timeline video, we posited that the puppet was built by Henry sometime before the FNaF 2 location opened, but he was arrested while it was still in use and jailed for the MCI. These two theories might seem mutually exclusive, as the puppet matching the styling of the toys might imply it was built for the 87 location, and Henry would be in jail by then. So either the puppet was built before 87, Henry was never in jail, or someone else built this animatronic. With it being made specifically to protect Charlie, I think we could safely rule that last one out. As for the other two, we know that the old animatronics were planned to be reused for the second location, only getting scrapped because of the smell and decay, so a repurposed machine isn't out of the question. And if it was Charlie's favorite, one built specifically for her, perhaps she'd want to go see it if she couldn't see her dad. Or maybe no one got convicted and Henry's still kicking, which handedly explains where the puppet came from. But come on, we all want to see that man suffer, and it sure handedly explains where the fuck he's been the last few years. But overall, things are just falling way into place for Charlie to be killed in 1987.
I'd also like to point out the security puppet minigame has the puppet looking for Charlie but unable to find her. If Henry built the puppet for a different location, and it was moved to another, it might still have the programming in to protect Charlie, whether she's supposed to be there or not. Even if Henry was arrested, it would still be looking for Charlie, as the bracelet would still be programmed in. Neither her nor her father are there anymore, but the puppet doesn't know that.
We know the puppet was possessed at the FNaF 1 location at some point, due to the between-night cutscenes. But when did those cutscenes occur? Was it before FNaF 2 or after?
And as Fazbear Entertainment points out in addressing the issues with Charlie 87 Part 2, really good series, by the way,
the sprites for the kids in Give Gifts Give Life seem to be based more on the Wizards masks than the classics.
If you look at the mask put onto the kids, we can see that the Chica mask has teeth on the top beak, which only Withered Chica has. And keep in mind, the Withereds only existed at the FNaF 2 restaurant. In the week before, Ralph mentions that he's glad they restored the vintage Freddy animatronic back to his classic design, which implies that Freddy started out looking like the FNaF 1 animatronics, was changed at some point, and then changed back. We also see a faint handprint on classic Freddy's head, indicating that the classics were the animatronics that were stuffed. This is all to say that the significance of the Give Gifts Give Life minigame using the heads of the Withereds means that these are the animatronics they inhabited when the Give Gifts Give Lives happened, which would only be during FNaF 2, giving credence to the idea that the puppet only existed at the FNaF 2 and it's the location Charlie died.
Did she first meet the MCI as Withereds when they were still trying to be fixed up and reutilized?
Does Give Gifts Give Life take place outside the location we're playing at right now?
That whatever is going on out there, however tragic it may be, has nothing to do with our establishment.
Whatever's happening out there, could that be a missing child whose body was hidden by a corporation that didn't want to be involved in another incident? Or a dead child who was found in an alley near Freddy's, but not close enough to say the franchise was at fault? The night guard at the first week of opening, now moved to the day shift, has reported nothing unusual, and he's on watch from opening until close. The police would find it suspicious, but maybe they wouldn't investigate for a few days, enough time for William to decide to greet them with a little display of corpses.
In the books, these kids are friends with Charlie Bot, not the original Charlie, who died when she was 3 years old, but she definitely seems to have made it longer in the game's verse. So why can't she have actually grown to know and care about these kids? Then, one day, she disappears or dies outside of the restaurant her father used to own, a location that her best friend, John, is just as close to as the rest of the group. And these kids are dumb and want to play detective, so they meet at Freddy's and try to stay overnight to find out what happened to her. But William gets to them before they can escape.
Save them, Charlie says to Freddy, because she is begging for him to save her friends. You can't, William says back.
The souls don't attach to the animatronics. They aren't close enough to bond to the metal, but the closest, say Jessica, dies right underneath Toy Bonnie, the animatronic that made her feel the safest. And so the terror and tragedy of the event collides into one screeching, angry being of agony. It takes the form that it thinks of as something they didn't get to have, the form of a protector.
In FNaF World, Shadow Bonnie has 3 moves, mostly support. The first is called Haunting. The second, literally Mimic Ball. And the third move, Giving Gifts, Giving Life.
What Charlie couldn't do with the DCI, but what Shadow Bonnie could do to the other children, including, maybe, the other ghosts around them.
We'll admit that our main flaw in Shadow Bonnie is DCI agony, is that Shadow Bonnie can appear before we think the DCI happened, but also it's a game, not everything's gonna be diegetic. Also, there's no way Gotham thought of all this lore by game 2. I am fully convinced that in that game, the shadows were just supposed to be creepy Easter eggs that he named with a key smash. But hey, if this thing is the collective agony of the DCI, that just leads us to one cohesive narrative. We've got no other information on the DCI, so why not at least speculate a little on what actually happened back there based on what little details we have? This was at the very least very fun to make and speculate on, and it makes Save Them an incredibly sad minigame considering the puppet failed to save her actual IRL friends, and now they're running around as that fucking thing from Watership Down.
Or maybe they did possess the toys, and now they're in Lefty, and the novel trilogy is fanfiction Charlie's making them up for all to chill out.
We have no evidence for that, but it would be really funny. Okay, but seriously, we gotta lock in on this Sonic video. We're gonna have to re-record, re-edit. Oh, fuck you!
Ding dong, here I come to find you. Hurry up and run. Let's play a little game and have fun. Ding dong, where is it you gone to? Do you think you won? Our game of hide and seek has just begun.
Hey, so that AR trailer with the C virus, and we all argued over whether it was Charlie or Cassidy.
I'm aware, I'm the resident AR girly.
So, the puppet never showed up in AR.
Yeah, because they hate me.
But Shadow Bonnie did.
Yeah, very famously.
Do you think that was, like, Charlie sending her goons after us? Her fucking squad.
Well, there is a point in the game where Shadow Bonnie is literally impossible to beat, so, you know, clearly she was right to send them to get the job done.
Charlie sends the entire girl gang to your front door to beat your ass.
Her and her friends would have killed the Mimic with hammers, I can tell you that much.